All right. So what happens when you spend 15 years sacrificing everything, sleep, relationships to chase status, to get the huge book, to be the ultimate top producer, only to find out that when you get to the mountaintop, it's not everything that you thought it was. And as a matter of fact, it's 0% fulfilling, and that this status and money game you've been playing is actually a dead end. That's actually what our guest kind of explores today with this guy's name is Scott Barker. He is not a producer, but he is a salesman through and through. And the reason we had him on is basically he's a sales guy, worked his way all the way up through, door-to-door sales to becoming a lead sales director at a $4 billion software company. He then parlays that into becoming a wildly successful venture capitalist, raising a gajillion dollars. Guy's young and has made more money than I'll ever see in my entire life. But he basically gets to this end of the road only to have this total breakdown and burnout, anxiety, depression, whatever you want to call it. And I think this conversation is super important for us in the insurance industry because I see it everywhere I look and we get messages all the time. People burn out or people looking to find meaning or purpose to what they're doing instead of just dialing for dollars and exchanging time for money. Like, what is it all for? A lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, a lot of depression in our industry. And we cope in a lot of ways with alcohol, Adderall, sleeping pills, whatever we can do to like keep the engine going. So I think it's an important conversation. And yeah, I know some of you are going to check out and say, man, this is a first world struggle session. What is this? That's fine. Maybe this isn't for you. But Mike and I actually share both of our stories of how we ran into a hard wall. And I don't know that either one of us have shared the specifics on it on this podcast before, but this topic is super important to us because we've lived it and it's not pretend. It's very real. Your body keeps the score and you rack up enough anxiety, fear, stress, and you will eventually hit a wall. It's just a matter of time. So anyways, that's what this episode is. Think you'll enjoy it. Give it some time. This is our first time talking with Scott. So maybe the first 5-10 minutes, we're kind of feeling each other out, but then we really start to hit a stride. And I think of all the podcasts we've done, this is the one Mike and I are most proud of. So we're going to get into the episode, but before I do that real quick, let's shout out to today's sponsor, Insurance X-Date. Generate leads, win new biz. You know them, you love them. Shout out to Rob and the boys over there. Insurance X-Date is where new business begins. Industry relevant data delivered on a software platform built for sales, not research. Identify and engage with prospects in minutes, keep track of your opportunities, and get production done. Whether you're a P&C guy or an EB guy, they got the data you need. Go check them out. Free trial in our show notes. Use our little special link. And with that, let's get into the episode. Hello, and welcome to the Max Revenue Show. I am your host, Trey Shields, along with the Zen Master of Commercial Insurance, Micah Salas. Micah, how are you this morning?
I'm excited.
Yeah. This is your pod today, brother.
It is, man. All these years you've been making fun of me for being Zen. It's come to fruition here for this conversation.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm actually, in light of recent things, I'm actually stoked about it too. An interesting conversation and a much needed one in our space. Burnout, workaholism, what does it look like when you reach the mountaintop and you realize it's not everything you thought it would be? I'm going to read his intro here first. Mr. Scott Barker, former venture capitalist, started his own fund. And this is his about section on LinkedIn. I spent 15 years of my life chasing money success and climbed the proverbial mountaintop only to find out that it didn't make me any happier or more fulfilled. I guess I'm a cliche. I recently stepped down from the venture fund I co-founded, sold my house and everything in it, and I'm currently traveling the world looking for some answers or maybe better questions to ask. Along the way, I'm interviewing others about their wake-up call and writing about burnout, workaholism, addiction, and my search for meaning. So without further ado, Mr. Scott Barker, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for your time and being with us.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
You are our first non-insurance guest, and we've been doing this for 3 years. So
I'm honored. Hell yeah.
Yeah, it'll
Let's
be
see if
good.
I can do it justice.
Yeah, no, I Trey had kind of told you as we were talking before call, we've both had our personal moments where we've similar stories to you, right? We hit that breaking point and realize something's not working, and maybe we'll get into that on this conversation. I, I guess I'd like to kind of kick it off and just kind of ask you, when was the moment that you like first noticed cracks and then it all crumbled, and like what were those signs you saw? Like how did that happen? And maybe give a little background of kind of what led up to that point, and then again, yeah,
Yeah,
when you noticed it.
for sure. Yeah, I think when we talk about like wake up calls, there's this tendency like, oh, just going to be one big moment in my life and it's all going to come crashing down and then I'm going to see the light, become enlightened and everything's going to be good after I crawl out of the hole. In reality, and certainly for me, fuck, I don't know if I can swear on this, but like
It's fine.
Yeah.
I probably had 40 wake up calls of varying degrees, throughout my career. Just like quickly for the guests, like setting the stage a little bit. I know a lot of this is insurance salespeople. Like I'm a salesperson through and through. So I grew my entire career as a salesperson. I just sort of started putting on maybe some fancier hats, but at the end of the day, I was a salesperson. I've done everything from door to door sales to one call closing in like a travel agency type environment before falling into tech. Started as an entry level BDR, making 100 cold calls a day, sending a million different emails, and then went on to carry bag, went on to lead teams, ultimately became the youngest director at a $4 billion software company called Outreach, which a lot of salespeople use. That was a super fun ride. Um, and then ultimately going on and starting my own venture fund, which is really just sales. But that's all to say that elapsed from like a BDR to founding a venture firm with like 100 million under management. That was like 15 years. And so to make that happen, you got to go pretty fucking fast. And you have to sacrifice a lot of the things that normal humans do, rest, spend time with family, go on, lots of or like vacations or just you end up sacrificing a lot. And my God, the thing I valued over anything was increasing my wealth and my status. For some reason, very early on in my life, like 5 years old, I decided those were the benchmarks, those were the KPIs. And I was very competitive, played high level, rugby, soccer growing up, and I wanted to be the best at what I did. So when I got in the business world, it was okay, the scoreboard is money and status. So let's go collect as much money and status as humanly possible. Um, and the cracks started showing arguably pretty early, but you're just able to, my friend puts it in a good way, you're able to push the beach ball under the water. It doesn't pop up as quickly. It's going to pop up, but you can like push it down. And for me, honestly, the early days of sort of wake up call manifested in, I guess, alcoholism, light addiction, like just drinking way too much. That was just my release. That was my outlet, and it's cute and fun when you're young because you're like, fun guy at the bar and you're getting wasted with your teammates. And it's like, it's not that big of a deal, and you can fight off hangovers and whatever. And so a lot of different wake up calls there. Probably got myself in way too many weird situations from that, but I always locked it in when it came to work. So it didn't really matter. And then, fast forward, all of a sudden you start, I never detracted anything from my life. I only layered on more and more responsibilities. So my jobs and my functions just kept getting more and more. And so you start to sacrifice your good habits for bad habits. So at one point you're making sure you're working out all the time and you're going to yoga and you're doing all these things that help you, stay present, but then you don't have time for them. And then all of a sudden you need other ways to get energy. And maybe your caffeine consumption like goes through the roof. Then caffeine stops working. So you're like, oh, well, all my buddies in finance are taking Adderall. Like, let's try that out. I need an edge. And then all of a sudden you're super hopped up on Adderall, and you wonder, and you're working till, you know, 9 p.m., 10 p.m. And then you're like, oh, weird. I can't sleep. Well, that's bizarre. And so you need to find a way to fix that. And so it becomes sleeping pills or Xanax or whatever. Then you're kind of caught in this loop of, said for a long time, my life was perform, escape, and try and sleep. That was it. That was just a loop. I had to go, I had to perform at work. I had to find a way to escape, which was usually, alcohol, and then, try and sleep. And it was just that again and again and again. And then more specifically, like I was engaged and that fell through, and that largely fell through because I was so focused on building my quote unquote empire and didn't have my priorities straight there. And I was traveling like literally every week, had to like small things like give up my pet, which was really sad because it was just like, again, prioritizing money status over everything. So anyway, there's a lot of wake up calls.
Yeah.
I wish I had listened to more along the way, but it is what it is. I'm a slow learner.
Did you have any, like, as this was occurring, because I think we've all been there, had our moments again, but like, did you have any sense of what you were sacrificing in that time, or maybe it was not until the later years, or how did that kind of go?
I knew what I was sacrificing, but it kind of felt worth it. I had this pretty deep story. There was two stories that played in my head. One was, and I used to tell people this all the time, all my family and friends and loved ones and stuff, was like, I would say, this is just an intense time period. And I deluded myself into thinking, this is just like a crazy quarter, or this is a crazy 6 months. And then I would have this more balanced, relaxed life. But I quickly realized, later, too late, but that this intense period had lasted 15 years. And it was just sort of this lie I was telling myself. And then like the last 5, every day felt like the most important day of my life, which is not a good framework to live from. And I'm sure people listening to this can feel it. You're like, oh, but I got this really big demo tomorrow. I got this really big client meeting tomorrow. For me, it was, I have this huge investor meeting. Like I have to be dialed. And so when that is the framework, any sacrifice you're making, canceling plans with friends, bailing on a date, taking, a sleeping pill to go to sleep, it's like that is all warranted because I have to be dialed for this really, really important day that I'm going to have. But then again, you're like, oh, every day feels that way. And it's not. It's a story that you're telling yourself. Now it's just hilarious when I look back. I'm like, it wasn't all that serious. It felt like life or death, man. Like I used to sign off every internal email on our last fundraise, so the last 18 months before I stepped down. It started as 50 million or fucking die. It just went to 50 million or die. And it was a hashtag MOD. That's how it would, any internal email. So that was my mind frame. It was, we're going to raise 50 million or I'm going to die trying. And like, that being like dramatic, got pretty dark. Like at least an old me had to die to make it happen. For sure.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I heard, I don't know if it's Arthur Brooks or some Harvard PhD guy was talking about our ancestors were only in like fight or flight, like that, like state, only if they were literally chased by a tiger, right? Like, but they were actually probably living a pretty peaceful life, like, because it would just, they'd come right back down to, homeostasis or that even keeled state really quickly. And now it's like, the way that, again, society's gone and technology's advancing, that's really changed quickly. So I'm curious. Okay, so you get to that point. For me, I had a personal issue a couple years ago where I had this building, and I had like a 60-day stretch where I was literally having a panic attack almost every day, freaking out, and I had to get something off my chest. I had to come to terms with something I'd done in my past and someone I had hurt. I'm not going to get into details on the show right now about it, but it was really, really hard to do because I knew that my life would change forever and I didn't know how exactly, and your mind starts future tripping and stuff. But then I got to this point where my body wasn't even letting me there was no other choice. It was like, this is it. I'm broken. Like, and I remember sitting there and honestly, even tears come to my eyes just thinking about it. I'm curious, Scott, like, was that kind of similar with your point when you got to this point of like, I'm walking away, or did you keep telling yourself, I can't do this, there's too many people depending on me? Like, what was that story like in your head? And what would you say to people also that are in that spot where they feel like maybe they have all this internal pressure that they're putting on themselves and don't know a way out? Like just give some advice maybe and share your story around that, like that
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing your story. I think it's really important that people hear that this happens to everyone. Everyone is going to go through points like this. And that was part of the reason I was called to, I kind of, to speak about my story more and stuff was after I ended up stepping down. I had hundreds and hundreds of people who I had known for years, founders, executives, all these people from the outside that look like everything's, super, super dialed, and they shared their authentic story. So I think it's super important to share those. But to your question, yeah, your body is going to your body, the universe, whatever. That's why, like, if you don't start waking up, and that is, you know, prioritizing the right things, mind, body, soul, family, those things, the universe is going to find a way to give you a wake up call, whether that's daily panic attacks, whether that is an addiction, whether that is divorce. Like, it seems to be one of those fundamental, just like laws of the universe, that if you're not listening, it's going to make you listen. It's going to find a way to do that. And again, going back to like the beach ball thing, like, you basically, the beach ball is no longer going down underwater. It's no, you're trying and it's not. And it happens in all sorts of ways. For me, funnily enough, and I hear you on the panic attacks, those were super new to me as well. I started having them the last couple of years of the fund, and I had never had them before. So I had no like tools to deal with them. But for me, it happened, I know very specifically, was actually when we hit the goal. So everything in my life was, okay, let's raise this 50 million and then my life will be fine. Then I'll be good. I know I feel terrible now, but that's okay. I just need to hit this thing. And when I hit it, we hit it as a team, of course, as a team effort. But I didn't feel anything. I just felt just as tired, as anxious, as depressed, as scared as I did, the day before we hit it. And I realized then that I had been living in fight or flight for the whole 5 years of the fund. And so you don't just magically hit a goal and then you're relaxed. Like, I had fried my nervous system,
Yeah.
and I honestly didn't know what to do. I went home, and the first time I was alone, I was like, who am I? Like, what is my identity now? What is my purpose now? And that's when I kind of looked around. I also like, who do I want to call? And it's like, oh, like, I've been ignoring my friends' calls for like months, and like, what? And like, I don't know. That's when I kind of did the internal audit on my life and just did not recognize my life anymore, at all.
Yeah.
And for people that are feeling like they're pushing the beach ball down, just know at some point it's not going to work anymore. And it gets harder and harder. And so it is really hard to address the hard things, make life changes. But it just gets harder. And I will say, like, you're you're doing damage to, it gets harder to unwind, I guess. Like, my nervous system was shot. I've been like a year, and I think only in the last 3 months do I feel like myself again. So it takes a while.
Yeah.
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 I always felt chime in there, Trey. I was gonna say one thing I was just gonna add. I think that's on you,
Sorry,
Trey.
guys. One sec. I think the AirPods just.
No worries.
Oh, there we go. Cool. We're back.
Go ahead, Micah.
Oh, I was gonna add, and then I'll let you jump in, Trey, is that it's funny after you kind of have this wake up call or moment, at least for me, it was like, man, why didn't I do this sooner and deal with this sooner? It's like, damn,
Mhm.
because then you start to feel that joy and peace again. And it's like, doesn't happen overnight. There's could be, like you said, months or whatever to unwind everything and deal
Mhm.
with unprocessed emotions and things from the past and feelings you suppressed or bypassed or
Mhm.
distracted yourself from. And all of a sudden it just comes up. And once you're in tune with that, you're like, holy cow, I was just thought this was normal. So anyways, thanks for sharing that, man. Appreciate that. Trey, I'll let you chime in.
Yeah, you were talking about like the universe or God or whoever is going to eventually slap you upside the head and give you your wake up call because you can't persist like that in perpetuity. And you're talking about panic attacks.
Mhm.
Interesting. Mike and I have been talking about this. Like your body keeps a score, and
Mhm.
like even though all this is the stuff between your head, like it. I don't. I'm not to get like into the metaphysics of it or whatever, but like your body holds on to that stress and that burnout and that overwhelm. And I told you off air, I ran into, quote unquote, had my wake up call last, I guess it would have been September, October. And I basically, similar to Micah, just hit a point of total panic attacks, completely debilitating, where I couldn't function. I couldn't go to work. I couldn't even pick up my kids from school. And, you know, part of that was I had been given a diagnosis. I won't go into specifics, but it, regarded the C word, or at least the
Oh,
things that lead
sure.
up to the C word. And, that had been building. That was part of that stress, the overwhelm at work. I have 5 kids. I had 2 different concurrent health things going on. And this just built up over 2025 to basically a boiling point where I just completely had a total mental, physical, spiritual, emotional breakdown. And had to make some drastic changes. Literally quit my job and had to cut ties with a number of different things in my life. Um, and then now, fast forward to, I guess, a couple of weeks ago. This is the wildest thing ever. I swear this is a true story. I go back to get some tests done. It's all gone.
Wow.
All of the precursors, all of these markers that were trending in that direction, completely reset to baseline. And so I'm no
Mhm.
longer at risk for this particular thing. And it was just like, I asked the doctor and I said, how can you explain this? He goes, well, psychosomatic. He said, stress,
Mhm.
your body keeps the score. That stress builds up and your body basically keeps inventory. And he said, my best advice for you is don't bring that stress back and you should be
Mhm.
fine. So
Mhm.
it's wild. So I guess for you, my segue to you is what did that breaking point look like? And then what did you do to move out of that? You said you just like found or getting back
Mhm.
into your whole self again. What does that look like from breaking point to now?
Yeah. Sorry you went through that. Weirdly feels like some strange blessing in disguise because you made those decisions and then thankfully it's no longer heading the way it was. So for me, so it came right after that feeling of actually achieving the goal and then everything come crashing down because I felt terrible. I still couldn't sleep. I'm sleeping like, maybe 3, 4 hours a night at this point, all sorts of bad habits. And, I had to jump on a plane again the next week and I was like, what am I doing? And my brain immediately kind of went to, okay, let's create a bigger goal. Now it's 100 million. Let's just go focus on that because my life was too much going on. And my life is just a metaphor with like I also felt inside, there was so much inner turmoil, so much, you know, like you said, there's like, I didn't process anything, I just looked forward. And so there was so much stuff to process. I was like, well, if I give myself another crazy goal, we'll just, we'll just keep looking forward. And that was going to be the plan. And then something just kind of, broke inside. I gave myself a little bit of space from the fund. I took 2 weeks off, and in that 2 weeks, I kind of, like, calmed down enough, to understand that it was almost like a life or death situation, and more in terms of, like, the person I know I am and the person I want to be and the man I aspire to be, the future father I want to be, the future husband I want to be, like that person is not going to exist if I keep down this path. And it felt like a very obvious fork in the road. And I can go play this character if that's what we want to do, or we can, be the person who I aspire to be. And that's when, yeah, not everyone has to do this, but I made the very dramatic decision to step down from the fund. Um, I let that sort of marinate for a couple weeks, and then decided I'd acquired all of these things that I didn't care about. I had the nice house, the nice watch, the nice car, and all of those things sort of felt like these fragments of an identity that I didn't really want to keep holding on to. I sold my house. I sold everything in it. Literally just had what would fit in a backpack. Threw it on, and I've been traveling for the last year. Bali, Vietnam, Nepal, hiked up to Everest Base Camp. I spent 4 months in India, largely in ashrams, meditating, sometimes for 10 hours a day. I was sort of, you can tell by my story, I'm sort of like maybe a little extreme on both sides. But yeah, what it's kind of like taught me and what I've come to realize is like, not everyone has to do that. But there are small daily things that we can do. And I'm now coming to the realization and the understanding that this conversation we're having for a long time was just about like, if I do some things and make some changes in my life, I'm just going to be like a happier person, you know? What I'm coming to understand is like, especially as we go into this next decade, which I call the acceleration decade. So we're already feeling like things are moving too fast. If you're a high performer, if you're ambitious, you're going. It already feels like things are moving at light speed. People are feeling burnout. Now, that is going to accelerate by a factor of 10 to 100x. And so the idea of slowing down now actually becomes a strategy. It is a tool that I believe will help you if you just looked at this conversation in terms of like performance, not how much it will make you a better partner, a friend, son, whatever. But if you just looked at it, performance, taking care of your mental and physical and soul like well-being will be necessary to function even at a baseline in this next decade that is getting accelerated by technology in a way that is completely unprecedented.
That's actually, I'm glad you mentioned that because I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on this. There's a person that I've been following for a while and talks a lot about the physical side, right? And your body's trying to give you signals, and sometimes we get so in our head about, hey, I have this, I have to change my thinking or thoughts or whatever, instead of just like listening to the cues the body's giving us, right? Because it's mind, body are one, it's in the same body. And one of the points that she made that I thought was interesting, because I started meditating myself back in 2019. And for me, it was one of the best things I ever did at first. I would do 45 minutes a day. It was like up to an hour. My wife would make fun of me, but it was awesome at first. And then all of a sudden, some stuff started coming up that I was like, holy shit. Like this is some thoughts that I haven't
Beach ball, go down, go
Yeah.
down.
Yeah. And so I was like, wait, meditation's supposed to make me feel better, right? And so I played this whole game and so what I'm trying to say is listening to this lady speak now here in 2025, late 25, 26, I now realized, and I had some language around what I was doing in that time, is that I was just trying to use it as a way to bypass dealing with the deep rooted things, right? And it could be anything. It could be meditation, yoga, working out. It could be a healthy habit. These are all good things to do. But if you do it with like the goal of bypassing and not dealing with the root cause of the issue, you're just kind of, you could actually make it worse. And so I'm just interested to hear your take on that, or if you had any experience with that, or what your thoughts are.
You're speaking my language, man. And that's how a lot of people find these practices. And I think it's okay. It's okay. But yeah, certainly think about 8 years ago, I was looking for things, if I'm honest with myself, like how do I keep going fast? And I feel uneasy, but like we got to keep going. So that's where I found meditation too. And I found yoga, plant medicine, all these things, but I use them as tools for performance. I wasn't giving them the sort of the reverence that they should hold, and they kind of worked, um, but not in the way that they are now. And I look at like meditation, these practices is it's actually really difficult. Like I think the game of meaning, which is trying to understand who you are, your place in the world, why we're here, is much, much, much more difficult than what I would call the game of more, which is what most of us are playing and what I played. It's a pretty easy game. The rules are I got to get more stuff. I got to get more money, and sometimes it's wrapped in I have to give more opportunities to my family, which is a nicer version, but it's essentially the same thing. And I think mindfulness practices will help you play the game of meaning a little bit more. But that's a really difficult game to play, and it's not about feeling good. It's about seeing reality for as it actually is. Humans, we're full of flaws. We make mistakes, and sometimes those come up in not opportune times. When we're meditating and doing things.
So I have a question for you. If you because obviously, the vast majority of the people listening are, top performers, type A personalities, and we all have different capacities. I look at my capacity. My capacity is, say, yay big. My wife, on the other hand, her capacity is so much bigger than mine. And so I think we all are born with just different gas tanks, if you will. So I know there's people that are listening to this and they have considerably more capacity than, say, I have or Micah has. And they're listening to this and they're like, dude, this sounds like this is a first world struggle session if I've ever heard one, because they've never hit that wall before, maybe at any point in their life. So what would you say to somebody like that that's never actually hit the wall? So for instance, I'm in recovery. I've been in a 12-step recovery program for a long time now. And it's like, it takes like we say all the time, like it takes what it takes. Like everybody's got to find their own bottom, right? There's nothing I can do to speed that up for you. You have to find your own bottom. So for somebody who's never hit that wall yet, and they listen to this and they're like, this sounds like a bunch of nonsense, what would you say to that person?
It's a great question. 1 year sober myself, so I'm still a baby.
Let's
at
go.
This, but it feels good. Thanks, man. So I think what I would say to them is it goes back to what I said earlier, but it's becoming a strategy. Okay, your life is great. You're high performers. You don't feel the burnout coming. Let's just look at what is coming. So AI is going to automate, like the hustle culture is actually going away because you can't out hustle AI, right? So by you like just keep on hitting the gas and making more calls and doing more meetings, like that is not a skill that is needed anymore. At least won't be in 3 years. So your grit, your hustle, your determination, that like one more dial kind of vibe, which I used to ascribe to, that is not valuable anymore. So what becomes valuable is your like the chopping the trees is done by AI now. You need to be able to see above the trees where you're going, and I really do believe that you could only do that with more stillness, silence, and solitude in your life, more reflection, more slowing down. And so, even if your goal is to just kind of keep going the way you're going, why not try, some of these things? And I'm not talking about, quitting your job and moving to an ashram for months, but these are simple things like, when is the last time you took a silent afternoon? And I'm talking 12 p.m. You tell your families or your coworkers, hey, I'm going to practice silence for the next 6 hours. That means I'm not going to speak. No one's going to speak to me. I'm not going to read. I'm not going to write. I'm not going to consume anything. So you're basically blocking any new input from coming into your brain. you will be shocked when the last time you did that is. Like, your brain starts going a little bit crazy at first, but what you do realize is the answers that will come to you when you stop being flooded with net new information on your phone, on your TV, pinging here, pinging there. Your creativity will start to explode. And then you can start extending that, to try 8 hours, try 12 hours, try 2 days, try a weekend. And tell me that it doesn't feel not just relaxing, and it won't at first because your mind will go crazy, but eventually relaxing, but also like productive. We're so quick to ask ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever, for answers. We very rarely sit and contemplate. Like, contemplation used to be a key way that human beings understood themselves in the world around them. I don't know what you guys, but like, contemplation is more or less dead. If you want to know someone or something, you first it was Google, then now it's AI. And in that contemplation comes what I think is wisdom, not just knowledge. We're full of knowledge and we have no wisdom. It's building a 1 hour daily practice in the morning or at nighttime that encompasses stillness, whatever that looks like for you, solitude, whatever that looks like for you, silence, and movement. Like, really simple stuff. But if you don't consciously set these things up in your life, make a conscious effort, your attention right now is the most valuable thing on planet Earth. Attention is currency, and you have to pay yourself first, or you're going to be broke. That's why you're going to feel broken. It's because everything, there's billion-dollar industries everywhere vying for your attention, and you're just not equipped. I don't care how disciplined you are. If you don't have rock solid habits, Thursday afternoon, I do, silence every morning at 7 a.m. I do my 1 hour non-negotiable practice. These are things that sounded fluffy and nice to haves in the past. These are need to haves just to survive. I really believe that.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I wanted to add to that for people that maybe have 5 kids like Trey or different situations. One thing that's helped me is to take the practice, because that kind of starts, it's called a practice for a reason, right? It trains you to get comfortable in that and then start integrating it. And for me, one thing that's really, I've kind of had to check myself on is this saying, one thing at a time. And so if I'm sitting there washing the dishes at night, I want to go pop on a YouTube video and listen to it, or I'm mowing the grass, I need to listen to some podcast. Your brain, and this has been really the last 3-4 months for me. It's like, I've been stopping that, right? Or I drive to Houston from Austin and I just sit in silence at least half that trip, right? And that's how you can kind of integrate it. And that's been super powerful for me and impactful. Like you said, Scott, just kind of unlocks the creativity and the wisdom side. But yeah, and also part of me is sad because I'll be sitting there walking my dog with nothing on and everyone else has earbuds in or even on their phone. It's like, damn, like, how do we get back to kind of that? Not saying there's not good uses of AI and technology, but it's kind of sad too to kind of wake up and see all that. So,
well, you put that in a post a while back on LinkedIn, and if you remember, a bunch of people in the comments were like, "You're a psychopath," or like, "What do you how do you do that?" And I would argue that's actually I would argue, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
That's if you can't sit in a car for an hour, 2 hours, you're in trouble. Yeah. Like we talk about, my next question to you is going to be like, what are some warning signs that you're heading that way? And like, I would say that's it. If you aren't comfortable, and myself included right now, if you can't sit still, and just drink a cup of coffee on your front porch and watch the sun come up, or drive an hour and a half drive on a way to a business meeting and just relax and be present where you are, I'd say you're cruising for a bruising. I mean, what do you think? And like, what would you say are some telltale signs in society today for these top performers that's like, man, this is something you might want to check yourself on, because these things that Scott, Micah, and Trey have experienced, these total like breakdowns, this is in your future if you don't reroute here.
Yeah, I think that's both the things both of you mentioned are great. Micah, like, underline the whatever you're doing, do that is just a great framework. I think we got so lost, myself included, in this. We were sold this idea of you need to optimize your way out of this problem. Oh, you feel off, you feel weird. Well, it's because you don't know enough. You need to listen to more podcasts, or you need more supplements. It was like all about, I would say the last 10 years were about optimization. And we all fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. I was like, man, retargeted with every health and wellness ad known to mankind, and there was always a new solution, a new habit I needed. I think the framing that has helped me now is less about optimization and more about like integration. So less time worrying about optimizing myself and finding more pockets to like integrate. There's a lot that we're going through more than any human being. Like we experience more in a day than like a human being did an entire lifetime, back in the day, just through all the different devices. But so that's a big one. I think the red flags are exactly that, Trey. Again, I try and speak through my story. When I was going through it, I literally fell asleep with like a podcast in every night. Like I would like go to sleep like some like murder podcast or something. It's just insane,
Sweet dreams.
and it's super common, right? People will have like TV on, and because it was the only thing that drowned the thoughts in my head, which instead of thinking, is maybe a problem that you can't even stand being in your head. It was like, okay, we just drown it out. And so that is a really big one. And like, think deeply about that, right? Like, why can I not do this? Well, someone has taken your attention span. That's what's happening. So it's almost like you've got competitive juices. Who's taking my attention span, and why do I not get any for myself? And I just wrote this today, but the last 10 years, again, it felt like we were told we needed to know more. There was one more hack that we didn't know, whether it was our job or our wellness. And if we got that, we would understand it. But I think as we move into this next era, what we choose not to consume is going to be maybe even more important than what we do consume. So a great just little exercise for people to do who are wondering, like, where's all my attention going? Why can't I just sit and have a cup of coffee? Why do I feel strange when that happens? Well, it's because you're giving your attention to too many things. So over the next 48 hours, don't change your behavior. You're naturally going to a little bit because you're doing this exercise, but try not to. And just write down everything that you consume over the next 48 hours. Every newsletter you read, every social post you have, every interaction in your buddy's group chat you have, all of those things, because that's what you're giving your attention to. I think attention, whatever you give your attention to is basically your God. That's how I think about it. If you're giving all of your attention to money, well, I don't care if you say you're a Christian or a Buddhist, like you worship money. That if that's getting all of your attention, that's what you worship. If it's status and you spend all your time thinking, how can I grow on LinkedIn? Well, your God is status. And so taking 48 hours, okay, where is my attention flowing to? What am I worshiping right now? And then auditing those things to say, okay, did this provide any value in my life? Did this make me a better decision maker? Did this impact my way of thinking in a positive way? If the answer is no, then you should stop doing that. If you say, well, I enjoy it, it provides me relief, then you bake that into your escape time. But no, you're consciously choosing to escape. And I think there's this really insidious, unconscious escapism that is really what's ruining a lot of people's lives and increasing burnout, is these tiny micro moments all the time where we're losing our attention and it's completely unconscious.
Content-stipated.
Anyway, that was a ramble. Yeah.
Content-stipated.
Commented on your LinkedIn post.
I saw that right before that. It was a good comment. I like it.
Of course, you think it's an original idea that pops in your head, and then I Googled it, and there was there wasn't a lot of it out there on I don't know, someone's used it before, but it's true. I mean, your brain doesn't ever have a chance to rest. It's like constantly inundated with thoughts and content.
That's something I struggle with. I mean, I have an extremely addictive personality. So it's like, we have these tools, we have this technology that allows us to scale infinitely and have huge impact and to serve others and do all these things for good, right? Which is like what we try to do with max revenue. But at the same time, it's like you're almost selling your soul because you're using these tools to have this impact. But then at the same time, like my phone's dinging during our call. I'm seeing my email notifications. It's like, so like, where's the balance there? Like, would we be better if we just like kill all the robots now and burn it all to the ground and just all move out to the woods? Or like, should we try to balance this for the people in the insurance world? You saw the settlement Meta just got, right? Because they clearly outlined that Zuckerberg and these guys designed it to be addictive, right? And that's the spillover into our world. So it's like, are we fighting an uphill battle even trying to balance these two things? Or like, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. As a former venture capitalist, that was a big part of the problem. I'm not anti-tech. I'm not anti-capitalism in any way. It's the best system we got for now. And I think technology is wonderful, and it has so many incredible capabilities, and we shouldn't go back. We shouldn't be Luddites. Should there be pockets where we go into the woods and reconnect for a week? Yes, yes, that is necessary. But I think humanity, as a whole, needs to have some pretty tough conversations with itself, and it does start on the individual level. So I'm trying to inspire people to take control of their own life, but beyond that, I think if you ask most people right now, is technology serving us or are we serving technology? I think a lot would say we're serving technology. Like AI was kind of just thrown on us. No one was like, God, I wish there was something that could write all my newsletters for me and like do it. Like nobody really wanted that. And now it's forced on us if you're not using it, you're going to fall behind. And like, I can't even tell you how many conversations I've had with friends in tech who are like, yeah, how's your company using AI? And they say, yeah, we're like basically forced to use it. We're all creating all these agents, and it's so obvious that I'm just training this thing that's going to replace me. And that's people in dev, in sales, like it's palpable. And those were their exact words. So it does not feel like we're using technology at the moment. I think that's okay. Hopefully it's just like growing pains. I think, one of the reasons for that is we used to do a better job at like guiding society and building a world that we all want to live in. There was a lot of great things that happened with like the human rights movement and all this like progression that was spurred by human beings being incredible human beings. And what's a little depressing, if you look back in the last 20, even 50 years, all of our societal changes have been byproducts of technology. So technology is driving the societal change instead of we're driving the societal change and building technology to enable that future that we all want. Fundamentally, extremely different, conversations. And this is the problem: is technology right now. It's not government initiatives, right? These are, nor should it be, but these are for-profit companies that build a technology. They don't necessarily care if it's a net positive or good. Like the idea of a company is to make money, and so it should be. That's fine. But now we have these things that are released that are incredibly powerful, that are there to make money. We all adopt them, and then society changes. And I think we need to flip that, where we decide the world we want to live in and build technology that enables that future. Yeah.
I get a nihilist. I get kind of a nihilist slant sometimes when I look at it, because it's like humans, we're just hardwired to advance at all costs. And it's like we don't even stop to look where we're heading. It's just constant advancement. And I almost feel like we're like almost like we're just the larva stage to AI, and like it's coming whether we like it or not. So to try to like push back and do anything is just, it's kind of worthless. But that's literally the worst stance you can take, but
Yeah.
I don't know, Micah, what were you going to say? Or I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Scott.
I was just going to say through that same vein, and I get this is maybe getting too philosophical for the audience, but this stuff's interesting to me is I hear you on the nihilist, and I was, oh man, starting this journey like a year ago, I was like pretty disillusioned. Now I'm very hopeful and optimistic. But to your point is like, I do think everything is trying to survive. So let's think of like even technology itself, right? A piece of technology wants to keep going, particularly if it has any sort of intelligence, which we've now created, right? And so it feels like that story is perpetuated to us when we're really close to technology. It's like, oh, we're just going to do this and there's no other option because cat's out of the bag. Man, I've been in ashrams and around people where we were not around technology. There is not a feeling of, oh, humans are just progressive and wanting to survive. No, humans just want to chill out and help each other and support each other. And we're really creative. And yeah, I think it's almost this, we're so close to it that, it reminds me of me thinking like, oh, tomorrow's the most important day. And like, that was so true for me in that moment. But now looking back, it is just so not true at all. And I think we're just so close to it that we're not seeing reality as it is, that it can be different.
And I'm glad you brought that up. I don't know where I heard this. I can't take credit for it, but we're human beings, not human doings. So just to be like that, like you said, in the ashrams or where you were over in India, those people weren't worried about AI taking over or anything. They were enjoying being a human, right? Just being. I wanted to ask a question on that because you did, just to repeat this for anyone listening, but 10-day silent retreat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone can do that, right? I'm just curious, what was the most surprising thing that you got out of the retreat when it was all over? Like, that surprised me. Didn't expect to kind of get this.
Oh, so it's 10 days of silence. You're also meditating 10 hours a day on a little square cushion. So you're alone with your thoughts. You're also battling an incredible amount of physical pain. I'm not some like yogi that can just sit cross-legged for 10 hours. I could sit like 5 minutes before. By day 7, I actually could. You kind of overcome the mental. You still have the pain, but your relationship to it is very different. I'll try and articulate it without being like too woo-woo, but it becomes extremely clear that we are not our thoughts, and most people like intellectually know that. You're like, yeah, but you really examine it because sometimes you're just lost in this, thought loop for so long. You're like, I don't want to think about this anymore. Why is this still coming up? And so you have so much time to analyze it. You're like, okay, what is the root of these thoughts? Like, where are these actually coming from? What is going on? You really cannot pinpoint it. It feels like there's this sort of some little well inside you, this little like pond that it just random is popping up. Okay, well, if that's true, then this is all just random. And what am I doing? And why am I putting all this work in? And like, this is pointless, And that's about day 4. And you're like, I'm fucking out of here. Like, let me run away. But then you sort of like, okay, so there's this little like well or pond thing and it's all random. Maybe I can control how like clean that pond is. And I think like a lot of religions and stuff were trying to explain this to us in the various ways. But like how you keep that pond clean is you live in truth, right? And you don't harm people, the classic things that every religion like don't kill, don't lie, don't do this. And like all of those things help you just have a clean pond so you're not thinking of, oh, I still have to fix that relationship with this person, or I kind of lied to that person a little bit. I shouldn't have done that. Like, if you just always live in truth over time, that is sort of how you can control those thoughts. They just get, I call them just like more productive thoughts over time and more like creative. And I think the other thing that's almost frustrating is intellectually knowing something is vastly different than like experientially knowing something. And so when I speak now, I catch myself of like, I listen to that dude, I'm like, is he just talking in cliches? Like, but all the cliches, the love is the answer, all this stuff. If you give yourself enough time and stillness to really like think about what that means, there will be a moment where you're like, oh, I get it. And not just in like, oh, that logic makes sense. It's like kind of what you were saying, a body keeps the score. Like all of a sudden your body and your being sort of knows it. And I guess that's my real message to people. Is like, don't trust anything I say, go, you, you have to go find what is true for you, and you have to go look for what a meaningful life looks like for you. And that's a hard journey, but I think it's the only game worth playing, you know?
It's awesome, man.
Love it. Micah, so to close it out, I just wanted you, Micah, to recap kind of your thesis on free agent versus top producer,
Man.
and then have Scott kind of just close us out based off of what you kind of relate to him and explain to him.
Yeah, so obviously we're in the insurance space, Scott, and there's always hey, I want to be $1 million producer. I want to be a $2 million producer. That's my book size. That's what I want to get to. And we've been interviewing a lot of top producers on this podcast, especially this last 4 months or so. We started doing that. Anyways, one day I was driving in silence and I was kind of starting to be like, man, I should be better. Why can't I be, I'm a top 25 percentile guy. Why can't I be a top 5? Right. And these thoughts are coming in my head. And then, but I was thinking about the conversations that all these people were having and their responses and how much work they had to do, the traveling, and all of a sudden I had this little like voice saying like, why do you even want to be a top producer? And I was like, I don't want to be a top producer. I'm really happy, actually content being a somewhat above average producer. It's weird to publicly admit that because in our industry and probably any sales industry, people be like, whatever, they'll look down upon you or whatever. But eventually I had this like peace, like just knowing like, hey, I'm actually don't want to be a top producer and I'm okay not being a top producer because I don't want to sacrifice time with my family and I don't want to get on a plane and travel across the country, do all this stuff. So anyways, say all that to say, came up with the concept of rather than being like $1 million agent, I want to be a free agent, right? And freedom can look like anything anyone wants it to, but it's for me, it's kind of just like feeling that freedom just to be like and that peace with being happy kind of or content where you're at. But I know content's kind of a bad word because people look down upon it again. Because you always want to be growing. So it's like that battle. But anyways, that's kind of what the whole free agent concept is just, again, being free to do what you want to do and to be comfortable where you're at and to feel fulfilled, right? So I guess, I don't know, Trey, what you wanted Scott to chime in on that, but that's
no,
my
it's just
thinking.
your concept of enough, right? Like, so start with the end in mind. What do I want out of my life? Here's the time I want with my kids. Here's what I want with my family. What type of finances do I need to be able to do that? So then your work actually is not about status or not specifically about money per se. It's about, it provides a means, A, for you to serve your clients, but B, to provide what you want to provide for your family. And it's just we're in this top performer space. So it's just that, and by the way, Mike is being super modest. Micah has produced well over $1 million in his career. And I'd say he's more like a top 2%er. So just disregard his humility. But I just, what would you, I guess, so like, I'm just going to give you that's his parting shot. And I'm just going to let you take us home and then I'll sign off.
Yeah. I mean, I love that framing, and it's exactly what I bumped up against. I got everything I ever wanted. I achieved the life of the top percentile of venture of tech, and it was terrible. It required sacrifice that I was not willing to make, and some people have to find out that for themselves. But you said something like, I think content is actually a great word. And that doesn't mean you're not growing. I think I would challenge people that if you're wired a certain way, it's not that you're going to stop growing. Let's say you now have, you're like, I'm content with where I'm at in my professional life. Well, you're going to have this surplus of energy and growth potential that you now get to consciously choose where that goes. And that could be being a top 1% dad, being a top 1% son, being a top 1% friend, wherever that is, or philosopher, writer, like these things that you like on the side, like put some of that effort into these other buckets. And I think you can only do that when, you find contentment in a certain bucket, then it can start overflowing to others. Because if not, it'll all flow back into that one bucket. And that's what, my life did and what a lot of high performers' lives do. Any surplus goes back into achieving an outcome where, the world needs your surplus for sure. There's a
Yeah.
lot of, yeah.
Thanks, man. That's awesome. Tell the listeners where they can find you, what you're up to. I know you have the wake up call you launched, so just let's hit on that real quick.
Yeah. If any of this is resonating, I talk a lot about this. I kind of talk about the psychology of meaning, modern ambition, and this idea of acceleration brought on by technology and how we can combat against it. It's not all, woo-woo, slow down. I want you to actually hit your goals, but survive and be happy doing so. So I have a project called The Wake Up Call. It's a podcast. You can find it anywhere. I've really been enjoying writing these days. So Wake Up Call, The Wake Up Call on Substack. Follow me on LinkedIn. I'm cruising all over, just in Mumbai, back in Canada for a couple weeks. But yeah. And thank you both for having me. That was a really, really fun conversation.
Thanks, man. That's awesome.
Scott, you're awesome, man. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Adios, everybody.